to do is say, everybody needs to log into the computers, and staff is hovering to help you.
Wait for a second.
And I will give the thumbs up to the camera people that we're going to start this meeting. You all set there, Eileen?
Yeah,
Gary, you all set?
I'm working on it. Oops, I messed up. Oops.
Join meeting. All right. With?
You can go ahead. I'll
All right.
this in the meantime.
In old days, you could go county on it, and we'd have all gotten like 5 or 6 of them.
Aaron's behind you if you need help.
You know, these would be
Okay, I am going to call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order at 11:01 this morning. Let's have a roll call.
Commissioner Cavell?
Here.
Cowell?
Here.
McGilvray?
Here.
Powell?
Here.
Charles is absent with notice. Long?
Here.
Moss?
Here.
Woodward?
Here.
Is ex officio. Markham?
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next up on the agenda is approval of the previous minutes. Could I have a motion? Commissioner Moss, supported by Commissioner Long. Could we prompt the vote?
That's good, remember that.
I'm sorry, who?
Oh,
Moss.
do we just want to, oh, there we go.
Moss and Long?
Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
Moss move.
And this is the agenda, or the minutes, previous minutes.
I like these actually.
Okay.
Yeah, well, the rest looks like I just said that, that's what that.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Is everybody following?
7-0.
Look at the bottom for the orange bar, and then that tells you the item that we're on. And I want to remind everybody to speak up, because we have the plexiglass and the masks. So are we done with that vote?
Yep.
Okay, so the minutes have been approved. Next up is approval of the agenda. Moved by Commissioner McGilvray, supported by Commissioner Long.
I don't do anything.
Please prompt the vote on the agenda.
I might have to. Oops.
Madam Chair, motion carried, 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, and Commissioner Kowal, I don't.
I vote yes.
She's also voting. Okay, is that everybody?
Yep. Having password problems here.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, okay.
We'll go ahead and make
Appointment.
that change for the minutes.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have public comment. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the Finance Committee at this time from the public? Seeing no one, I will close public comment at this time. And we will move on to communications. We have 2 items here. I need a motion to receive and file. Commissioner Moss, supported by Commissioner Powell. Any comments or discussion on these items? Go ahead and prompt the vote, please. Okay. Next on the item,
All is yes.
oh, okay.
Motion carried, 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Great, okay, thank you, everybody. Next up, we have a consent agenda, but there's nothing on it, and so we will move into the regular agenda, item number 9A. the preliminary report on the proposed ADA restroom renovations at the Board of Commissioners office. I need a motion. Commissioner McGilvery, supported by Commissioner Moss. And do we have somebody here to talk to us about this?
Who's supposed to be?
Morning, Commissioners. This is Ed Joss. Can you
Morning,
hear me?
Ed.
Hi.
Welcome.
We can't see you.
We
though.
can't see you though, but we hear you.
My camera is on, but for whatever reason, it's blank. So I can assure you that I'm cleanly shaven and have it good on today.
Yeah, that's right. Here's when they're doing underwear.
So I'm happy to answer any questions you have regarding this. I'm not sure if all the commissioners are aware, but we were tasked with looking at doing renovations to the auditorium area to provide ADA accessible toilet rooms. And we were given a very short window to put something together. So I believe your packet includes some hand sketches from one of our project managers, one of our architects, along with some rough high-level cost estimates.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Commissioner Moss.
Thank you. Actually, I'm talking from two mics here. We'll see how that works. I noticed it's mentioned restrooms or whatever, but this is, I would, not to expand or mission creep, but we were talking about ADA compliance, not merely for restrooms, but for, the rest of the commissioner's wing. Just want to make sure that that's clear. No, as an initial response to a very limited question, I appreciate your work in doing this. That's all I'm going to say for in a moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Moss. Anybody else? Yeah, I want to also echo what Commissioner Moss said about thank you for doing this level of work and figuring it out. Basically, you're saying for somewhat under $500,000, we could do both bathrooms and the rest of the building if necessary. And I think all we have to do at this point is receive and file. We're not going to make any decisions today, but this was a good effort to tell us how much it would really cost to do this. And for those who might not know, we do not have an accessible bathroom in this building. And when we have crowds of people here, sometimes there are folks who have limited mobility, and they have to actually exit our building and go into another building to use the restroom. So that's what precipitated this discussion, and now we have more information to work with. So I very much appreciate it. Commissioner Moss again.
Yeah, I do have one thing I'd like to throw in. Once again, this is I consider this to be a very rough back of the envelope response, and not that it isn't a fine product, and it is, but we kind of threw this at you, and you appreciate your coming up with it. One thing that is almost as important to me as getting the ADA compliance, and it's not simply bathrooms, although that's thrown around, but is that this commissioner's wing looks to me like it's survived largely intact from 1963, which puts it to me as architecturally relevant example of mid-century architecture. So you don't want to just go in with a crowbar and turn it into a 2021 compliant thing. You need to be a little more sensitive to what's already there. So I definitely want to be sure that we are aware that we're working with the equivalent of an historic building that is architecturally significant. If for my 2 cents worth, I'd do the bathroom on the other side. The one here frankly looks like the one at my parents' house, which was built in '64. But just to caution as we go forward, to be mindful of the fact that this is an architecturally significant building, and make everything that we do consistent with that environment. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have Commissioner Woodward, followed by Commissioner Powell.
I'll pass. pass.
Oh, you're passing,
Pass.
okay.
Sorry.
Commissioner Powell?
So now, I would like to know what is next steps, be it that this is something that was, inquired by us, and also if we do decide to move on this, I'm big on learning process. So if we were to move on something like this, what is next steps? Who makes those decisions? And what funding would that come out of? Is that something that it comes out of the commissioner budget, or what budget does that come out of? So those are the questions that I have.
Those are all really good questions. Commissioner Woodward.
Okay, so I was actually going to go down that line. I'm like,
Oh, okay.
do we want to have that conversation now? So, Ed, lean on you. I would expect, and just based on I think the shared importance that brought this to light, that as I know we're going through a countywide assessment. We're required to have a capital outlay program plan put in place. One option would be to put this in on that capital outlay for the capital improvement program for the next year, and in that process identify a funding source to be able to make this happen, or put it on. Slide it for the next. There's a 5-year plan. So Ed, can you speak a little bit to that and kind of? My sense is this is not yet on that, but we could go when we go through that process of adopting that. Probably after the budget and after the countywide assessment of our buildings, that would be a time to put it on there, at which point we would be appropriating, making some dollars available through appropriation, or identifying dollars to advance a specific project like this. Ed?
Yes, yeah, of course. I have, looks like 5 notes I've written down here that I'd like to address, and and one of those will address that question. So if I may, I'll just run through these. Stop me at any time, interrupt me at any time. But one of the things that I wanted to note is Commissioner Moss, or one of the commissioners, I'm sorry, had mentioned, maybe it was Markham, that for around $500,000 we could convert both of the existing toilet rooms into ADA accessible toilet rooms. This was really approached as an option 1 or an option 2. I'm not sure that both would be needed. In a situation like this, we would do what we could to provide 1 accessible toilet room. I do appreciate Commissioner Moss's comments about the architecture of the building, not only the mid-century modern, but just noting that there are challenges that we have with trying to shoehorn in these type of improvements when the building was never initially designed for that. But I want everybody to be aware too that there was a project that was brought to us a while ago, and one of our project managers has been working with the board staff to do additional renovations in that area for the offices, to create some touchdown spaces for the commissioners, some collaborative space. And I wanted to note that I believe it's option 2 that would, the renovations would be done to the southern part of the building. And if that option was chosen, it would conflict with the other project I was referring to, where the break room would be is planned to be updated. So there was also another comment that within the building there is not an ADA accessible toilet room. That is true if we're talking strictly about the Board of Commissioners auditorium. The auditorium, as you know, has the 2 toilet rooms. Neither one are ADA compliant, but within the courthouse itself, there are ADA compliant restrooms. And I believe there is signage that would lead someone that needs those accessible facilities from the auditorium to those facilities. And I'm just noting that for informational purposes. I'm not implying that is ideal by any means. So there's also a question, I believe, from Commissioner Charles, what are the next steps? And I'd like to touch on that briefly, and then that will lead into the funding question. So the next steps for us, if we, sorry.
Correction, that was Commissioner Powell, not Commissioner Charles.
I'm sorry, yes, Commissioner Powell, my apologies, yes, thank you. So the next steps would be if we were given direction to move forward with this, and if option 1 was selected or option 2 was selected, or for whatever reason, if there was a need to do both, then we would actually put together some detailed drawings and specifications. Those drawings and specifications would be used for bidding to get the contractors on board, and then those documents would also be used for construction. Now, to develop those documents would take at least a few weeks. Then we would have to send out an RFP to bid for the contractors. We would get those bids back, we would evaluate them. Based on the results, we'd be able to put together a firm budget. That process, on top of doing the drawings, would be at the minimum a few more weeks. And I just mentioned that because I know there was mention of coming back with a quote-unquote more detailed plan sometime in October. If you do the math, that obviously puts us beyond October. So if and when we get to that stage and we come back with bidders, firm drawings and specifications with costs, once we know what it's going to cost for sure, then we can identify the funding. Chairman Woodward, I would tend to agree with you that this would be something that would be considered for the capital improvement program. As you mentioned, we are currently in the process of working with an outside firm to help us analyze our current plan and see where our needs are and if additional funding is needed. There was an ADA study that was done in the courthouse that helped identify areas for improvement, and that was going to be part of, I believe, like a $37 million bond issue to address ADA improvements for the entire campus, as well as some life safety improvements. And that has been put on hold until we are done with the assessments that we referenced. So I know that was long-winded. I hope it addresses some of your questions, and I'd be happy to answer any more you might have.
Thank you.
Commissioner Woodward.
This is actually one other question. Just we start thinking through funding. Have we ever applied, or are there grants to help secure funding for ADA compliance? I don't know, at the federal or state level. And if so, have we ever pursued those?
Not that I am aware of. I am not aware of any federal funding or any grants that are available for ADA. And so, to my knowledge, we have not pursued anything of that type. I will, though, because the question's been posed, I will make sure that we do a search and see if buried deep somewhere there is something available.
Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wants to speak at this time? Seeing no one, we need to prompt the vote on receiving and filing this report. So check your computers and
Or co-op?
Coal's a yes.
Motion carried, 8 yeas, 0 nays.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Joss. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is item 9B, Universal Communications and Collaboration Program Phase 3, Group B, Wireless Network Project Allocation. I need a motion. Commissioner Cavell, supported by Commissioner Kowal. Good morning, Mr. Tim.
Good morning, Commissioners. Can you hear me okay? So this first item that I'm bringing this morning is the last phase, hopefully, if everything goes as planned. And we've had some very good success with the Wi-Fi implementation so far. So that is our plan at the moment. This is the Wi-Fi network completion for the rest of the county campus. This is part of the UCC program. So the funding is available as assigned fund balance to be deposited into that program budget. And as you see in some of the attached documentation, we've already completed the Wi-Fi. We did it first in IT just to make sure that the process, the technology, the engineering all worked as designed. Then we also completed the district courts. That was completed last year. Actually, that was completed in January of this year. And we've done a couple of the floors in the executive office building. So also completed several areas within this building, 12E, the county circuit court area. So those are noted on the map that's attached. So the rest of those buildings will be completed, as well as buildings that are also mapped out on the rest of the campus that do not have secure Wi-Fi today. So this is, it's about, if I remember right, about 1 point something million. And again, the funding is available as assigned fund balance for the project. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tim. Any of the commissioners have any comments or questions? Commissioner Cavell.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Mr. Tim.
Good morning.
I'm a little confused, so please help me. There's, in the assigned fund balance was $598,000, right? Or am I reading that wrong?
This one is 1.6 million.
That's what you're asking for.
Yes.
But what I understand is one of the whereases say there was a unanimously approved resolution, appropriate $598,000. That's for last year's use to upgrade using this,
So-
or?
So in one of the changes that that Kyle Jen has talked about with assigned fund balance is that we're going to get out of using assigned fund balance, right? And part of that is we had money in that category already for this project. The other thing that is in the next budget is that instead of putting money in assigned fund balance, there will be a deposit basically for IT technology projects that is part of the budget every year
Right.
in the IT budget. So that's the additional set of funding for this project and for the next one, actually, the printer replacement.
So then you're not asking for new money because all of the 1.6 million has already been assigned.
So basically, yes, with a little bit of caveat that the $1 million that is allocated in next year's budget, that budget technically is not approved yet.
And so then you want us to give you $1 million like 2 weeks before we approve the budget?
Just to approve that allocation, we won't actually enter into any contracts or expense until after the budget year starts.
Okay, so why do we have to do this now and not October 1st?
Some of it is we already have, because this is an ongoing project.
Sure.
We can execute parts of that project today with our engineering firm, Presidio, that's already under contract.
That's why you would need the money now instead of October 1st?
Right.
Okay.
The money that's in the assigned fund balance to be able to spend that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else have any comments or questions? I see nobody requesting to speak, so let's go ahead and call the roll. Prompt the vote. Did you want,
And Caldwell?
Yes.
there's always got to be one
I
that's.
know,
Not Gary this week.
Which password am I supposed to use? Madam Chair, 0 nays.
I was having that problem for a long time too, but for some reason it doesn't mess me up anymore. Okay, so that item has passed. And let's go ahead and move on to item number 9C, multifunction devices procurement. I need a motion. Commissioner Kowal, supported by Commissioner Moss. Again, Mr. Tim, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioners. So MFDs, or multifunction devices, are basically a fancy word to say printers. But they also scan, they fax, and we have gone through a project several years ago at the county to consolidate printers in the county. And that's done, basically for cost savings. So we don't have lots of users with printers on their desks anymore. We also entered into a contract that did go out for bid. It was won by, I keep forgetting the name of this company. I want to say Access, but it's not Access. I will look that up in a minute, because it's not critical, except for the fact that we did follow the RFP process. Included in that was the acquisition of new devices. And so now we're at the point in this, most of the devices we have are over 8 years old, and they do get a lot of use. Some printers, believe it or not, have actually had more use during the pandemic in certain departments. Obviously, with many people working remotely, we've also had printers that have less use than maybe were originally planned. So we'll take all of that into account as far as the timing, because this will take several months to replace these devices. But this will provide updated software, updated hardware. The other piece of this project will include, we will have printers that will now be accessible. Instead of typing in a code, you'll be able to use a badge to access the printer, and that will improve security of printouts as well. And one of the benefits there is you can send documents to the printer, and they won't print out until you go to the printer to actually scan them and have them print. They'll be stored in a queue. So again, we won't have some of the risk of having documents that are confidential laying around on a printer or on a table that might not be intended for the person that picks it up. So that's a security improvement as well that will come with the new software. This project also has been identified in the IT capital plan. Again, some of this funding is in existing fund balance that's been allocated in the capital plan, and then the balance of it is in the 22 budget. Are there any other questions I can answer?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tim. Commissioner Kowal.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Tim. Regarding these RFID, the ID cards, the ones that we use to get in here and so on and so forth. So not that I'm going to be here printing stuff, but
Right.
Is that something that we should be looking at updating? Because I've had mine since 2015.
Yes, there's actually, those badges are actually managed and supported. Building security is managed and supported out of the building security team, which was part of FM&O. Recently, one of the reorganizations that was approved was it was moved under Director Hardesty in the Emergency Operations Center. And that is an ongoing project that they have. So as the badge readers are replaced, as the badges are replaced, and those that have an older style badge will get a sticker added to the back of their badge that will provide that RFID technology as an interim move until all the badges are replaced.
So I don't like my picture on mine, so in order to get a new one, I have to lose the existing one? Is that how it works?
Actually, I believe pictures can be replaced. Yeah.
Does
that's
a woman
just-
ever like her picture? I don't know. Anyway.
Some people like their old picture, but
Is that it, Commissioner?
Yep,
Are
thank
done?
you.
Okay, next up is Commissioner Long.
Okay, did my thing light up?
You
Okay,
showed up
I just
up
wanna make
here,
sure. So I just wondered, I'm sure you are, but I'm just gonna ask, all the printers are gonna be the same, right? So when a co-worker goes staff goes to one printer to the other, so they know how to use them?
actually, they're not the same, and some of that is by design. Because some areas have higher speed printing requirements, or they may have, we have a limited number of color printers available.
Okay.
Not everybody gets to print in color. And there are definitely standard models.
Okay.
So yes, we do limit in order to reduce
So
cost.
there's not, I'm just saying, because just even with our printer, it's like to replace and stuff, it's easier to train the staff if they're
Correct.
similar model, similar from each port that they go to.
And
move,
it's
or-
it's
yeah.
cheaper for us to maintain them as
Okay,
well.
so you're
Standard
trying, but
parts,
some are
standard
colored, some are
toner.
not,
Yes.
just to change, I'm thinking, changing the toners and stuff, and so
Exactly.
it doesn't take someone 45 minutes every time they go to a printer, and not know the printer, so that's why I was just, okay,
Yep,
thank you.
you're absolutely right.
Thank you,
Takes us 3
Commissioner
people
Long.
hours.
Commissioner McGilvery, followed by Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Tim, I'm curious, has this been bid out already?
This contract was bid out. The contract is brand new. I had that in the summary. I believe it's 3 years old.
I couldn't find it listed as to who got
Yes, the contract was established July 1st of 2018. Applied Imaging is the name of the vendor that won it.
Okay. Are they a current company that we use now, or?
Yes, they are. Yeah, like I said, this went out for bid back in 17. They were awarded the contract July 1st of 18, so the contract's 3 years old. And so we'll extend through the 5-year period, and then it will go out for RFP again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Woodward.
So my question, thank you, Madam Chair, the reduction in charging the cost per page, is that because of the cost savings of the device? And that's how, by the technology bringing it down, so we're not under charging departments for it. Like, this is the cost of a black and white piece of paper and color
Correct.
happens just to be less than what we were paying before.
Correct. It's really very similar to, if you buy a new car and the gas mileage is better, we will get better gas mileage on our printers. And we actually pay Applied Imaging what's called a per-click rate. So we pay for every print that we do, we pay Applied Imaging, X number of cents for black and white, and it's almost double for color. And that's how they invoice us, that's how we pay them. They maintain the printers, they provide the toner, they provide the maintenance and service, and we just pay them basically by the page, almost as if you went to a copy center, right, and paid them 10 cents a page. Our rate is much cheaper than that because we own the devices, but they provide all that service for us.
Well, and I'm just glad that we're moving now. I'm hearing all the conversation about chip shortages and technology.
Correct.
Overseas, that these prices everything's expected to go up because of all of that. So, getting in now to get these devices, now is the time to do it. And buy your Christmas presents.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I still have up Commissioner McGilvery and Commissioner Woodward wishing to speak. So if you don't want to speak anymore, hit the red button. Down at the bottom.
We got you,
We put you in.
Oh, you added me because I raised my hand. Oh, I get it. Okay, I was like, because I can't. it won't
Perks
let
of
me.
being the chair. You don't have
I
to press the
guess.
button.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other people who want to comment or question on this item? Seeing nobody, let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
Cowell?
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays. Motion carried.
Passes unanimously, so thank you, everybody. Next up, we have item number 9D, again for the IT Department, contract extension 004940 with Strategic Communications LLC for cloud services support. I need a motion. Commissioner Kowal, supported by Commissioner Long. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners. So this is a contract extension request. Just a little bit of background. I won't go into everything that I submitted, but I'm happy to answer any questions. But just so you know, we obviously have a data center here at the county. We also have a disaster recovery data center that's located off campus that we contract for managing additional hardware, space, utilities, et cetera. We also have data centers in what's kind of affectionately known as the cloud. We do services in the cloud where we manage the hardware. We don't manage the cloud and we don't manage their data center. We do most of that contracting with AWS, who is one of the market leaders, the Amazon Web Service organization. We also don't own data centers, but we get capacity for some of our software in other data centers with systems like Workday. Workday is what's known as software as a service. So that software does not run in our data center. It doesn't even run in a data center that we contract with. It may be in AWS. It may be in Google's cloud. It might be in the Microsoft cloud. That depends on that vendor and where they have contracted it. So just to let you know, we do spend a fair amount of money as well as network engineering and security engineering to have these services available. And frankly, one of the benefits of that has been our ability to respond through the pandemic. For example, email was available to everybody from everywhere, all of you as well as employees. And it was relatively simple to make that happen because our email runs in the Microsoft cloud, as an example. So in the data centers that we actually manage, and the 3 that I mentioned in AWS, we have a partnership with a company. We actually don't contract directly with AWS. They don't contract with small entities, and we would be considered a small customer for them. So we do that through a company called Strategic Communications, and this contract is due to go out for bid. We are requesting a 2-year extension for that, and the reason is the complexity behind the management of these data centers. If you could imagine, the work that goes into, and Ed Joss was just talking about, building a restroom, right? If we built a data center and we had to consider the cooling and the electricity and the floor space and the facilities for the racks and the power and all of the hardware that goes into it, we contract with someone else to do all of that work for us, and they provide the capability for us to do that, and then they provide a bill to us to do that. That is in our current budget. It's in our current operating model. So we're not asking for additional funds. It's already outlooked. We have historic cost figures, and we know what the new cost figures will be. So this is an extension that allows us. We do believe that this should go out for bid. We do believe that there are services that we currently are purchasing that we can bring in-house. Some of those are security services. Some of those are, the building of the applications that we load onto these servers. So there are many things that we can continue to bring in-house, but we still need some time for our team development. We still need some time to manage the licenses. License management is it is a huge, huge part of what goes into managing a data center and what goes into managing really servers and IT contracts. So that's the service right now that Strategic provides for us, that we do need some more time for our team to continue to take some of that over before this goes out for bid. So we're requesting a 2-year extension for that.
Okay. Commissioners, start with Commissioner Kowal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to say thank you, Mike, for the outreach. A couple of us had questions about these contract extensions recently.
Sure.
And you did a really great job of explaining it. I appreciate the time. And we do understand, or at least I do understand, you're not purchasing widgets. It's a little bit more intricate than that. So I completely understand, and I appreciate the time and your explanation. Thank you.
Commissioner Long.
Commissioner Kowal kind of asked it, or thank you. I just want to make sure we are going to go out for bids, but you explained it, so that was my question. I just don't want to keep extending contracts with it, but you answered that. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions on this? Seeing none, let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
Kowal?
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Next up,
Thank
we
you,
have
Commissioners.
item number 9E, lease agreement with amendment number 2 with HD Development of Maryland, Home Depot, USA. I need a motion. Somebody want to bring Commissioner Cavell, supported by Commissioner Long. Any comments or questions on this item? Okay. Seeing none, let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
Kowal?
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Next up, we will take on item number 9F, lease agreement amendment number 1 with the Charter Township of West Bloomfield for equipment replacement and additional fiber easement. I need a motion. Commissioner Long, supported by Commissioner Cavell. Does anybody have any comments or questions on this one? Seeing nobody?
Madam Chair, if I may make just one
Sure.
comment.
Of course.
We do have 2 more lease agreements. These 2 are the last lease agreements that will need to be done for the radio project. But we do have some agreements that are interlocal agreements to provide the service to the communities. So that will be coming in the future. We're not ready to provide that yet. But those will be the interlocal agreements to provide radio service. And then finally, we will bring an agreement that requires the chairman's signature related to our final step in integrating our radio system with the Michigan Public Safety Commission. That will also be coming in the next 9 to 12 months as we get the radio system ready to turn on live. But that should conclude the rest of the agreements that need to come to the board for review and approval. That question was asked the last time I brought a couple leases, so I wanted to reply back on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tim. Anyone have any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, let's prompt the vote on item number 9F.
Kowal?
Yes.
I know, Commissioners, you have 8 yeas and 0 nays.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you,
Next-
Commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Tim. I can't imagine running the IT department for an organization this far-flung, you know. Thanks for being there.
That's a great job.
I'm glad you like it.
She doesn't want to be
Came up
there.
with a cloud anyway.
I know.
Called the
It's not
Spirit
my
in the
forte,
Sky.
you know.
That's a good one. All right, next up, we have item number 9G, fiscal year 2021 third quarter financial forecast and budget amendments. I need a motion. Commissioner Powell, supported by Commissioner Cowell. All right, who's going to talk to us about this? Anybody?
Good morning. This is Kyle Jen and Lynn Sonkis, broadcasting live from the Troy Conference Room in the Executive Office Building.
Can you hear us okay?
We can hear you.
Okay, great.
All right. So you have before you the third quarter forecast and associated budget amendments. You know, as our staff has worked with departments to update projections on both the revenue and the expenditure side, you know, we find ourselves in a, you know, I think a strong position as we approach the close of the fiscal year in light of all the moving pieces that have occurred over the last year, particularly in respect to the pandemic. So at a high level, we are projecting a favorable variance of $42 million as compared to the amended budget. If you break that down, we're expecting to be favorable on the revenue side by a little over $350,000. That is a net result of a couple major factors. One is that the clerk's office revenues are projected to come in $5.7 million higher than the original adopted budget. And then we have a variety of other revenues across departments that are projected to be about $5.3 million lower. A number of those, you know, are related to slower activity because of COVID, and therefore there are also lower levels of expenditures. So the larger dollar amount is that we're projecting $41.7 million in lower expenditures than were originally projected and included in the budget. There's a few factors there. There's actually a cost of $6.8 million being built in related to the VSIP. So this is the portion of the $8.5 million in VSIP costs that will occur in fiscal year 2021. And then beyond that, you know, there's a large amount of favorability related to personnel and operating costs. You know, again, I think, you know, at least partially a result of slower activities in a number of departments related to the pandemic, as well as some remaining payroll favorability from the use of CARES Act dollars for eligible public health and safety payroll. So those factors get you to the $42 million in favorability. I would point out that you know, this is compared to the amended budget, so the adopted budget plus all budget amendments that have been adopted prior to this. You know, accounting for those budget amendments, our use of fund balance was at $44.9 million as a number of resolutions have been approved for pandemic response and other purposes. So, you know, this favorability really offsets the majority of that. And right now we are projecting that the use of fund balance in FY21 would be $2.9 million. So a relatively small amount. There will certainly be some further adjustments as we, you know, move into the year-end closing process. Just a couple of notes also highlighted in the memo. We have a small amount of unfavorable expenditures just in two departments, economic development and emergency management. Both of those amounts are less than $200,000, and we expect that we'll be able to resolve those as we close the books here. So that's the high level. Lynn is going to highlight just a couple of the key budget amendments included in the resolution.
So with the quarterly forecast resolution, there are a number of budget amendments that take place or that are called out in the resolution. Most of the amendments are net neutral. It doesn't impact the bottom line. It's either moving the budget from one division to another, correcting the department ID, a grant number, a program number, or moving amounts between line items. It's not changing the bottom line. But there are a couple items within or whereas statements, budget amendments that are requested to appropriate additional dollars or make adjustments that do impact the bottom line. But I'll say some of them, a few of them are more routine in nature. One of them being on what would be the first page of the resolution, the fourth whereas down, related to appropriating $32,000 from the circuit court civil mediation funding that comes in, that's used for expenditures from in the judicial administration area for technology and equipment / furniture needs. And they usually typically come through once a year for those types of things. So it's appropriating dollars that are in available set aside in a liability account that can be used for this purpose. And it's roughly, it is $32,000 for 2021. Another whereas budget amendment is calling out for a approval for a project that's it's on PDF 106 into 107. It's the last whereas, moving roughly $34,000 to appropriate money out of the miscellaneous capital outlay line item to replace some aging conference center shades, since the conference center is used quite a bit for virtual meetings. That is a project that is needed and would be moving forward upon adoption of this resolution. The next whereas immediately following that is related to the VSIP funding. So as you recall, last December, there was a resolution to approve separation incentive, the voluntary employee separation incentive program, and then the VSIP-C that was recently approved, and where both of those resolutions called out that a separate resolution or budget amendment would be forthcoming to appropriate dollars. That it was indicated that there would be use of fund balance for that VSIP program. The budget amendment is calling out for $6.8 million, as Kyle referenced, for 2021, $1.7 million for 2022, and just over $1 million for 2023. And finally, on PDF page 108 of the resolution, roughly in the middle of the page, there is a budget amendment for a resolution that was approved by the board in early August for the creation of the new Department of Public Communications. Just prior to that board meeting, it was determined that it would be best to have it be its own department. We did have a budget amendment prepared at that time, but it changed to be its own department. So we had to go ahead and create an additional department structure. And that budget amendment is reflected in Schedule C of the budget amendment schedules. So typically Schedule A amendments are anything that impact general fund, general purpose. Schedule B amendments are anything that reflect or impact special revenue or proprietary. And we usually reserve Schedule C amendments for anything that has a larger impact for a collective, I'll say, in this case, it was four pages of budgetary amendments that we had to do to move it to a brand new department, including it was moving from originally intended to be under emergency management and became its own department. So included in that is the shift of the existing appropriation of $1 million from emergency management for the public communications operations into the new department, and it's just further delineating that dollar amount. So again, that resolution was approved on August 5th, Resolution 21323, and this is just the technical budgetary amendment to facilitate all of that detail. I will also just add, as Kyle noted, there are a couple departments that we're watching, general fund, general purpose departments, economic development, emergency management, that we should be able to resolve at the end of the fiscal year. There is one proprietary fund that we are watching. It's the Building and Liability Fund. As you may recall, with the 2022 budget, it was noted that we made rate adjustments and allocation adjustments to be able to maintain and sustain that operation so that we do not have a deficit situation. We do, with this quarterly forecast, that fund is currently projected to have a deficit of roughly $1.8 million as we anticipated, and we will be making those necessary adjustment at the end of the fiscal year once we get the final actuary report for year-end close. So you'll be seeing more an authorization for to resolve that issue with the end of the fiscal year. But again, 2022 forward, those rates have been adjusted to maintain and sustain that operation.
All right, and with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Well, thank you. I will open it up at this time to the commissioners. I'm not seeing Commissioner Cavell.
Thanks, Chair. Hi, Kyle and Lynn. I was just curious, did the Office of Public Communications in this, I was trying to follow along, but did the Office of Public Communications budget go down by $34,000 because you had to clear out the shades, or is it still the
No,
same?
so that's a separate item. That's a separate project. The $34,000 was a separate appropriation for a project that was independently handled from the creation of the department.
But if I
The
read,
conference center also does get used by other area. That conference center does get used by other departments as well. So it's not exclusively something used by that department.
right, but if I'm reading this right, you transferred funding, $34,000 from the Department of Communications into the project work order fund, so that department had $34,000 taken away, right?
Well, what we adjusted is we took it out of the miscellaneous capital outlay, that's a non-departmental, and we usually appropriate it to probably the most, I'll say, most representative department of who may be requesting that project, and it happened to be them. So we made the appropriation, we reduced the miscellaneous capital outlay budget, put it a transfer in the Department of Public Communications to give it to the project work order fund.
Oh, okay.
So it's-
Thank you. Understood.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else have any other questions or comments on this item? I don't see anybody listed to speak. Nobody's raising their hand, so let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
Colwell?
Yes.
Motion carried, 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Next up, we have item 9H, appropriation of American Rescue Plan Act local fiscal recovery funds for county pandemic and recovery operational expenses. I need a motion. Commissioner Cavell, supported by Commissioner McGilvery. Hello again.
Hello again. So before you, you have a resolution that would authorize $10 million in ARP dollars for certain county operational needs in response to the pandemic. If I could, I'll just step back and try to provide some perspective. There is a memorandum in your packet that you might have had a chance to review that lays out this context as well. You know, certainly over the last 18 months, the county has responded to the COVID-19 pandemic in a multitude of ways in terms of external facing programs, you know, COVID testing and vaccination and other response measures. Over the last really several months, we have worked very closely with Tom Hardesty with the Department of Emergency Management, who has obviously been engaged on the ground on these response efforts, as well as Stacy Smith with Health and Human Services, to make sure, that as we're closing out the year, that we're maximizing all available federal fund sources to pay for these response costs, and working to minimize the use of county general fund dollars. I'd like to particularly thank Holly Conforti on the Fiscal Services team, who I think is on the line. She has spent any number of hours. I'd hate to count up the number of hours working through all the details on this. So in total, we are currently projecting that the county will expend $147 million in fiscal year 2021 on a variety of pandemic response costs. The large portion of that will be funded out of CARES Act dollars, so $128.6 million. So this comes out of the county's original CARES Act allocation of $219 million. The first roughly $90 million was expended in fiscal year 2020. This remaining amount, has been expended for the various programs that the board has approved, as well as operational costs for the county. Beyond that, we have now received $6.6 million in federal grants that run through the State Department of Health and Human Services to our Department of Health and Human Services, primarily for COVID-19 testing and tracing costs. There's also the $10 million of general fund that the board approved and has been managed by the ad hoc pandemic response committee, that was intended to be in advance on receiving some of these other federal dollars when it was approved earlier this year. And then additionally, there are, a number of expenses, particularly related to vaccination costs, that are covered and funded 100% by FEMA. So those are kind of all of the fund sources that have existed. We have worked to make sure we're maximizing all of those fund sources with the exception of the general fund, and then identified pandemic response costs that have been incurred, that can't be covered by one of those other sources and would be covered by the American Rescue Plan dollars included in this authorization. There is a list of the major categories that we've identified, including, for example, food service costs at jail, which have been handled by outside contract since jail inmates are unable to perform food service work during the pandemic. There's a variety of IT costs, that have been incurred for remote work, for the board's webcasting upgrades, and a few other things. There are the cleaning costs at the animal shelter, again, because jail inmate trustees can't perform that work during the pandemic. Those were being covered by CARES. They're now being picked up by ARP. We have about $1.25 million in payroll costs for employees responding directly to the pandemic within the Sheriff's Office, Emergency Management, and Children's Village primarily. There are $4 million in non-departmental costs for things like staffing the Emergency Operations Center, screening at county facilities, and managing the warehouse where our PPE has been stored, as well as some direct PPE purchases that aren't covered by other fund sources. And then additionally, we have the contractual support on board to make sure we're compliant with all federal requirements related to ARP. And then lastly, about $2.75 million would be used to fund things that were previously funded by the $10 million general fund advance. So, that $10 million general fund advance, we've worked through, what are the costs that can be covered by those health department grants? What are the costs that will be covered by FEMA? For a third thing, No. And then, these remaining three items would be covered by ARP so that we're not incurring the county general fund expense. $1.9 million for supplies, public testing, and other operational costs. And then a total of $850,000 for the 2 vaccine incentives that were approved by the ad hoc committee. For the public-facing vaccine incentive, as well as the vaccine incentive that's been made available to county employees. So, this has been, obviously, everything through the pandemic, things have moved fast as the county has responded. As we move into FY 2022, our goal is to return to a more traditional budget process where we've got fund sources more clearly identified up front. I've attached a memorandum that we've sent out to departments emphasizing that point. And we expect to have a list, as soon as this is approved, we're going to move into the phase of what ongoing costs in terms of food service, cleaning costs, and other things will need to be covered by ARP in FY 2022 and bring that list to you as soon as we have it. So that's, there's a lot of moving pieces there. Happy to answer any questions. I think Tom is also on the line. If there are questions about some of the specific categories of expenditures that he's been involved in.
Okay, thank you. We'll start with Commissioner Long, followed by Commissioner Cavell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that memo. That was excellent, and it wasn't real long, so that was really, it wasn't a Bob Dado one. I actually read it and understood it, so thank you. Thank you. I know, he's probably not watching, but at least that was a nice memo with it. So I'm just making sure on this resolution right now, the $10 million is just for the reimbursement of the vaccines with the 4 items or whatever listed in the testing and stuff. That is for that only, this $10 million of this resolution. Is that correct? So, like where it says it's, I've got to go back to my resolution. So this 10 million is going to be used for related vaccines, contact tracing, testing, and other actions relating. Is this what this resolution is? Only the 10 million for that? I'm just making sure.
Right. So it's the full list of bullets that starts at the bottom of page 1 of my memo and runs on to page 2.
Okay.
But,
so
this
then,
is for county operational costs, as opposed to, some of the external facing programs to deal with acute needs of county residents and businesses that the board has previously approved out of ARP.
okay, so then we'll just see more and more of these resolutions with a dollar amount for different expenditures in the future, then, right? Is that correct for the other things?
For FY 2021, we're asking for the authorization to cover the expenses laid out in the memo. As we close out fiscal year 2021, we'll provide a final list of those, but because of timing, the resolution itself doesn't include all that detail at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cavell.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I have a few questions. So, first, thinking about the 1.25 million for county employees responding directly to the pandemic, is that like pay raises or salary boosts or time and a half and all that for people, or what does that pay mean?
I think Tom can probably speak to that in the most detail. I think it's largely overtime costs, right, Tom?
He's not.
Tom was in the room.
He was here.
Right.
So I don't know if
okay.
So
He's not
in the
on. So
room
this
now.
is largely overtime for those employees. That's created specifically by the pandemic as opposed to their base payroll.
Okay. When thinking about the $2 million. There's $250,000 going to, among other things, IT, Board of Commissioners webcasting upgrade, GIS, HR stuff, and digital media response. Is that like Facebook ads? and stuff like that?
I'm not sure if we have that detail right in front of us. Can you speak to that, Holly?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I think that would have to be an IT question. That was just what was provided to me in their details as far as digital media response. I think that they would have to answer that question.
That could have been some of the updates they made to the website and as well.
We can follow up with that detail.
Okay. Also, the $1 million for the sheriff's office to do food contract service. One, because we were talking about contracts with IT. Aramark's been the sheriff's contractor for, I think it's 18 years. So just when we talk about cycling through contracts, that's just a weird thing to be mindful of. But $1 million sounds awful round. Is there any justification for that?
That is a rounded number. The more precise number is somewhere in the stack of paper. Is actually $906,000. This is largely, where they've had to stock, prepackaged meals for inmates.
Okay. Okay. And then the last question. Oh, I'm curious about the $10 million we did from our general fund for pandemic response. You mentioned earlier about 2.1 from already being spent out of that 10 million, and I know Tom has come here before to say that some of that 10 million has been reimbursed. So have we expired or spent have we expended all of that $10 million that we advanced? Because if not, why are we using 2.75 from ARP if we still have, some left over?
Yep, so that's a great question. So out of the $10 million that was initially authorized as advance funding, $8.4 million was approved for allocation by the ad hoc committee. We are expecting to be able to move all but $2.1 million of that general fund onto either health department grants or ARP funding. The remaining $2.1 million will stay as a general fund expenditure, but then get reimbursed by FEMA as we go forward. So those dollars will sit there, but will then be offset by revenue we'll receive down the road. And I should mention, that pulling back then, that $8 million of the $10 million authorization that won't be used is included, in those projections we just presented on the third quarter forecast to help offset other general fund expenditures and keep our use of fund balance to a smaller number.
Okay, so then if we are going to get some of this reimbursed, then do we need to hand over 2.75 million, or should it be something more like 0.6 million if it's a difference of 2.1 versus 2.75? And I'm just asking because I don't know if I understand your thinking.
Right. This is the kind of thing where ideally we do this on a whiteboard, but
Sorry.
Out of the $8.4 million that's been allocated, 2.75 of that is for those costs laid out in the memo that we're going to move to ARP funding.
Yeah.
Another chunk, and I don't have the total dollar amount in front of me, is being moved to health department grants, again, because the general fund was appropriated in advance in anticipation of receiving those dollars. And then just the $2.1 million will remain as a general fund expenditure because FEMA requires you to spend the money up front and then get reimbursed.
So then that money that you want to move to 2.75 to ARP, that 2.75 million from the general fund returns to the general fund? Or that's since we've already allocated it, you figure out
It'll
what else?
return
you
to the
want?
general fund. Yeah.
Okay,
Exactly.
understood. I see.
Moving the
Okay.
expenses to the special revenue.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I have the document in front of me, and my button to speak is not on that same page, so thank you for recognizing.
No, yeah, that's a flaw.
It's okay.
Yes, I mean, it's like, yes, well, we had Mike Tim here, fix it. Yeah, I think too, I mean, Commissioner Cavell was talking about that. When we advanced the $10 million, it was like, we're gonna put some money up right now, make it available. And we knew that FEMA would reimburse for so much. We knew there would be state money would come through appropriations. With the whole goal, putting as much of that money back in front, so that we had the money that we could actually be pushing out. And so, I mean, I think that conversation was really important, because I looked at the same thing, and I said, like, well, we've already appropriated this, but we're basically reimbursing our general fund for things that we did for the pandemic. That's an eligible cost, so that makes sense. There are a couple of things, and I see like about $250,000, and I guess this is going to come to a conversation that we'll wrap up also with the budget. I mean, I know that over the course of this, that, I mean, as we're responding to the pandemic, we need to move fast. We have to address the situations that emerge. The animal control, I mean, cover the cleaning costs. I mean, my understanding is that we actually did contract for these services. I mean, this was not an overtime to additional staff that we contracted with this. So we have a policy of, I mean, contracts, I mean, above $250,000 coming to this board. When I see about $250,000, I don't know if that means that it's $249,999. That's why the contract didn't come. So my question is, was that in fact a contract that we entered into to address this issue, which I don't think anyone disagrees? Where is that contract? If it's above $250,000, that it should have been a contract that came before the board. I realize a lot of things are going on, so I'm not pointing fingers, but I guess that's my first question. Is it above $250,000? And if so, where's the contract? Who's the contract with, and where is it?
Certainly. So the contractor used for this was a contractor that the county already has a contract with for general cleaning costs named Saber, S-A-B-E-R. So fortunately, you know, because of the timing, we were able to utilize that contract and add these services at their standard rate to deal with the cleaning needs at the animal shelter.
Okay. So we didn't use Saber at the animal shelter beforehand. We just we use this cleaning service above our maintenance staff in county facilities. Is that? Or does Saber do something else that we contract with, and then we added cleaning services to it?
Saber does general custodial services at a number of county facilities, as I understand it. And then the new cleaning services that were needed because the jail inmate trustees were unable to perform those services as they have in the past because of the contract.
Certainly, okay. Related to, I mean, also Commissioner Cavell talking about the additional food services, is this an additional $1 million to the food service contract at the jail, or was it to a different entity to provide staffing to do that work?
That answer I do not have at the ready, but we can follow up.
Right, okay, well, if it.
Commissioner Woodward.
Hello?
Chairman Woodward.
Oh, there you are. Hey, look at that.
Hey.
You disappeared from this room and you popped up somewhere else. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I had another meeting on ad as well, but popped back on. I do know Aramark was the jail contractor. They did get some additional out of them. They actually couldn't provide everything they needed, and then some of it was actually MRIs because that's what they could get to supply. I don't know if that's 100% of that, but that's two of the big chunks there.
So that's actually food, not just the staffing of the food.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so when you said the MREs, like we purchased the MREs from another entity, or we purchased it through Aramark?
That part I don't think they're through Aramark, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. So, I guess, that situation is another example that if it was over $250,000 in MREs, and that would be a lot of MREs. Have you guys all ever had an MRE?
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess knowing what that contract was, I guess I assume, was it bid out? If it wasn't, because of emergency, there's provision for some sole sourcing. It's a contract that I would like to see. And if it's over $250,000 and it wasn't with an existing contract that reasonably adds on to what we currently have, it's a contract that should have come before the board. And would like that to be, we're doing it after the fact and going forward, and we're in a pandemic and we were moving fast. And I want to commend, I also, not just Holly and the fiscal team, but everybody that was involved in moving these resources out faster than any other county in the country. You have to have some grace in some of this to respond to the pandemic. That being said, I'm going to zero in on the $4 million. I think, Kyle, you know where I'm going to go with this. There's a guidehouse contract that we've been working with that's providing this guidance. There is no question that is a contract that must come before this board. So it must be approved by this board. And I know that we engage with them for services. I think as a good practice, I think we all are glad that we have, and they are without question one of the most experienced and best firms to step into that space. But that definitely is a new contract. And I would like to have that contract, and I would, as part of approving this, that and frankly anything else in that $4 million that is above $250,000 for other services outside some of the the other emergency operations and things that we have been doing, that hasn't been approved already, like the lease. I assume the $4 million helps cover the lease costs for the building. Where we're storing our PPE and all that type of stuff. That all did go through an oversight process. The guidehouse contract never did. And I'm going to be a stickler that I firmly believe that this board needs to formally approve that contract to be congruent with our policy. So I'm going to be voting no today.
Okay.
To vote yes.
You're going to vote no on this today?
Today to get, but would like the contract by the end of the month.
Okay.
I guess unless people want to wait. We have it. We know we have it. We're relying on it. It's a contract that this board, in my opinion, should have been part of the approval process. I understand. We granted some money through the emergency pandemic. At $10 million, there was a mechanism to actually advance some money if necessary. That committee could have released some of those dollars if that never happened through that. This is something that, from a constitutional, a contractual oversight role, absolutely. And it's a significant contract. And so at minimum, I think we've got to clean up that. And I want everyone to see that contract and understand the terms of what that means.
Okay. So do we
We'll be sure to follow up on all those contract details by the end of this week, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So do we need an amendment to this? Commissioner?
I don't think, I think there might be an amendment that gets added once we get all that stuff that we can deal on the floor.
Okay. Commissioner Moss?
I'd move to table this.
Okay, we have a motion to table this item.
Would we postpone, you mean to, just to be clear?
Postpone to a date certain, or just
Or
postpone in general? till-
Postpone, okay. Second by Commissioner Kowal.
I have a question. I have a question to
Ross?
Chairman Woodward. Would this satisfy you to table it until you get the information that you believe we should have?
Sure. So what I want to, I guess, sure. If we do that, I would, ask the chair of committee if we could gather again before. We're not scheduled to vote as a board until the end of this month. So there's
Right.
time that the finance committee could reconvene, and then we could address this issue there. I think that would be appropriate. I would be fine with that. But I think it is important as we kind of clean up the books for September, for the fiscal year, that we get all this other stuff that's here. And this is, Kyle talked about, putting better, stronger, procedures in place going forward. These are all things, every 100% of everything in that $128.6 of CARES dollars came through this board, and I'm very proud and thankful for all the commissioners that put in all the extra time to do that. I think this is important, so as long as the Finance Committee can gather before the next board meeting, I would like to get this resolution adopted at our next scheduled board meeting. So, I'm fine to table it now, and then we can come back.
Okay.
That's a yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we need,
Conditional yes.
we need a vote on
Conditional upon
postponing.
what? I'm not going to make the motion to have you voted down. What?
Oh, no. Conditional that the Finance Committee will gather before the next board meeting to be able to take up the measure.
Thank you.
Okay, so we need a vote on postponing this item to a subsequent meeting, which will be scheduled momentarily.
I have a question.
Subsequent meeting prior to the next board meeting, is that how you use it?
Prior to the next board meeting. Mhm. Commissioner Cavell, you had a question?
That was the question.
Oh, yeah. We want to get all this
Yep.
square before the board meeting on the 29th. Okay, any other comments or questions? So we're going to prompt the vote on postponing this item to a subsequent Finance Committee meeting.
Caldwell?
Yes.
Okay. So do we want to, well, we'll wait till the vote. Okay, it passed unanimously to postpone it to a subsequent meeting. Do you want to pull out your calendars and figure out when that is right now? Can we do that?
What?
Or is that
Why don't we wait to
inappropriate
make sure that we
time?
can get all that stuff?
What?
Once we have the stuff, and then.
Oh, once we have all the stuff? All right, well, I heard them say we could have it by the end of the week, so I'm thinking if we could schedule a meeting sometime next week. I know.
Well, I'll be here on the 29th, so we could figure it out.
No, we don't want to
before
have it on the
then.
29th, though, if we can help it. We need it before that.
I do.
Commissioner Powell?
Is there any way as commissioners collectively we can just agree to wait to hear from you, knowing that we do have a meeting that we need to convene prior to our board meeting? And you let us know, but we're really waiting on them to give you all the information.
Okay, so the suggestion is we wait to have all the information and then schedule a meeting after that. Okay.
And as long as all of us agree that we know she's going to call, we should move that way instead of just throwing dates out there.
Okay. We do have to follow the Open Meetings Act, so we'll have to have a couple of days notification in advance and that sort of thing. So, all right. My calendar says sometime the end of next week, toward the end of next week. So if we have all the information, that's what I'm going to be looking for. So that if there are any questions, we've cleared stuff up before the final vote on the 29th. Okay.
Great.
All right, so we have postponed that item to a subsequent date.
Date uncertain.
Date uncertain? Okay.
Every date's uncertain.
So the next item on the agenda is item I, evaluation standards for the expenditure of American Rescue Plan Act local fiscal recovery funds. However, April Lynch, who is responsible for the next 4 items, A, B, C, and D under item number 10, has a time constraint and was asking if we could pick that up before we picked up item number 9I. And since Mr. Ward over here is item number 9I, and he doesn't have any problem being leaped over in the meeting, I guess I need a motion to change. Do I need a motion, Pam?
You can, or if there's no objection, you can just take up.
Does anybody object to moving into the Lago material first? Nope. If nobody objects, we're going to move on then to item number 10A. These all came out of the Legislative Affairs and Government Operations meeting yesterday. Item number A is fiscal year 2021, 2022, 23, and 24. United Auto Workers Local 889 representing facilities, maintenance and operations, Homeland Security, Human Resources and Water Resource Commissioner Supervisory Employees, supplemental. I need a motion. Commissioner Cavell, supported by Commissioner Long. And I see we have April Lynch here with us. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you so much for accommodating my schedule. So over the next few meetings, you're going to see a lot of me as we have 9 open union contracts, and this is just some pieces of it. As you know, back in December, the UAW started to form in some different departments, and we created what's called a master agreement. And as we go forward with different departments, they all have different needs. We have what's called supplemental agreements. So what you have before you here is our first few supplemental agreements, and I'm going to go over those fairly high level. There wasn't a lot of issues or different things that we needed to really adjust. What you'll see here, and as I go through all of these, not only here in item A, but in item B, is memorializing kind of what was happening with the non-union during that time and making sure that it was in place in these contracts, i.e., if they were getting uniforms, we wanted to make sure that they were getting the same uniforms and that we had memorialized that in the union contract. So the first one that we have are those in the supervisors.
April, hold on.
Could you wait just a second?
Just one
We have
second.
some commissioners with some questions.
We can't see the documents.
I can't.
Yeah, I had to go out and back in. You're getting a little message at the top.
Like recycle thing
Go back to agenda details. Maybe I prompted it after you went to it.
Right, I can't get any of the A through D
Go
right now.
back to agenda details and then.
Yeah, go back.
Back in.
Okay. Yep, got it. Got it, thank you.
Okay, sorry. I got
Thank
it
you.
too.
I couldn't get it.
Yeah. Okay, we got it.
Thank you, I was trying to follow along too, and I
You
was
got
like
what
pushing
you
them all,
need?
I couldn't get anything.
Okay.
Thank you.
Has
Thanks,
everybody
April.
got the documents
Yes.
up on their
Now I know.
screens? Okay.
I'm trying to
It was
figure out,
not
wait a
only
minute
you,
now.
Commissioner Powell. It was several of us.
Yeah, it said, sorry, page not available, so, okay.
Okay. All right, we're back at you, Ms. Lynch. Thanks.
No problem. So what you have here, we'll go through A first, is the supplemental for supervisory groups. And again, so we have, it's kind of interesting, we have supplementals for the supervisors by department and then non-supervisory by department. So there's still one master agreement, but we'll have an overview of probably between 9 and 10 supplementals because again, each unit or each department may have like little nuances. So what we had here on A is the supervisory groups for facilities, maintenance, operations, or for the supervisors for facilities, homeland security, some human resources and water resources commissioner. And again, you'll see in your summary, it's a fairly decent summary of capturing what we would call normal common practice and placing it into the union contract. They all agreed to maintain the current comp plan as is with the same steps and the same ranges. There might have been one-offs in there here or there, but for this one in particular, we were memorializing their shift premiums, boot allowances, and uniforms. And again, it was pretty common practice within the department. We just memorialized it and then addressing and confirming their on-call pay and overtime pay. That's all I have for that particular unit.
Okay, any comments or questions from the floor? If not, go ahead and prompt the vote.
Cowell?
Yes.
So probably $250. It's $250. Expenses.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas?
Item 10A passes unanimously. Thank you. Next up is item 10B, fiscal years 2021, 2, 3, and 4, United Auto Workers Local 889, representing non-supervisory employees of human resources and financial analysts, senior financial analysts, and financial analyst coordinator supplemental. I need another motion. Commissioner Cavell. Supported by Commissioner Powell. Okay. Go ahead.
Again, Dave, this one is non-supervisor. This is our human resources department and a few units within classifications within the finance department. Again, memorializing some things and clarifying how some of their pay might work if they're 410s. But again, he kept the same comp plan, no major changes to address, just clarifying common practice.
Any comments or questions on this one?
No.
Go ahead and prompt the vote, please.
Yes.
Last time it was Gary.
I know, it's always Gary, it's the first time.
All right.
Motion carried, 8-0.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Item number 10C, fiscal year 2021, Oakland County Employees Union affiliated with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 58, AFL-CIO, OCEU wage reopener. I need a motion. Commissioner Long, supported by Commissioner Powell. Okay.
Okay, this one's a little different. This is the IBEW. They had a wage reopener this year. We had already approved the majority of the units. The only one left was WRC, and we have come to an agreement for just the WRC unit. The ones, other units within that wage reopener had already been approved by this board, so this is the last one left for them. And then they go back into another wage reopener this next year, and then they'll be fully open the following year.
Okay. Any comments or questions? All right. Please prompt the vote.
Kowal?
Yes.
Motion carried, 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Passed unanimously. Next up, we have fiscal year 2022 salary recommendations for non-represented employees. I need a motion. Commissioner Powell, supported by Commissioner McGilvery. All right. Save the best for last.
So again, this is also a normal course of action for the Board of Commissioners. As you know, while we do work through, assessing what our budget needs are for the year, there's still a motion that needs to be made on what the actual general increases are. So I just want to talk about that just a little bit because it's a little bit different this year. Nothing too crazy, but we have, again, as I said, 9 out of our 11 contracts are open this year. And so when we looked at our 3-year forecast going out, we did budget 2% of what we call total compensation as a budget guidepost for us as we go through this, as I'm going through all of these, not only union negotiations, but we need to address that in the non-union as well. And so what I mean by total compensation is, especially when all these contracts are open, that there might be some other ancillary benefits that we may want to work with the unions, and then again with the non-union, i.e. extra contributions to retirement, different contributions maybe to the retiree health care or anything like that is part of that 2%. So this year we're actually recommending a 1.5% increase to the general salary. So these are all folks who are not covered by a union contract. As I work through a few more, I have some tentative agreements with some unions that we're hopefully bringing in October, and we'll be able to close out a few more at that time. Once I see where all of the, what I call non-312, or basically minus the sheriffs, I can calibrate the non-union as well to see if there's any ancillary benefits that we want to address with them. Again, maybe an increase in contributions to our retirement or whatnot. So we are recommending a 1.5%. And then more than likely, I know for sure that I'll be coming with another request in November for potentially some supplemental benefits that again, I want to see where we end up with the other unions and realign and shuffle to get everybody more in alignment with synergy. So there's 2 things I believe here. One is for general increases for the employees that are not represented by the bargaining units, and that is 1.5%. And I believe there is a second motion that needs to be discussed as it relates to countywide electeds. And I'll leave that to the board.
Thank you. Comments, questions? Commissioner Woodward.
Yeah, and April, you mentioned, I just want to underscore it. So the recommended budget overall built in a 2% across the board. The 1.5% recommended as the wage increase, mostly inflationary related, and leaving that extra 0.5% to address those other things you talked about. So it is captured. That is captured in the full budget.
That is correct. Thank you. Yeah.
I got one more. The question that also came up in Lago, to be addressed here. What is the cost of the 1.5% across the non-represented employees? I see the budget spreadsheets are here, and then when I scroll to the very bottom, it doesn't add it all up.
Right. Let me pull up something really quick here. Give me 1 second. I don't know if Kyle is still on here, but I know he was able to send something so in total, I believe that for 2%, again, total compensation comes out to about $5.4 million in general fund. At 1.5, that is about 4.1. So it leaves about 1.3 million on the table for some extra benefits as we work through that process.
Thank you.
And this is both represented and non-represented. So the goal is that I'm hopefully bringing union contracts that are also in alignment with that pay range, or that total compensation, or close to it.
Other questions? Commissioner Cavell.
Thank you, Chair. So if I understand right, this is actually in effect, a 0.5% decrease in what people would have expected?
No. So we budget. So typically in the past, actually, we've only budgeted 1. And then you come to the board and kind of realign the budget. So we budgeted 2% in total compensation, which would include, for our budgetary purposes. So we're recommending a 1.5. They don't necessarily, it kind of goes all over the board depending on the year. Some years was 0, some years was 2, some years was 1.
Okay. And did we do this last year of giving people 1.5% increase, or?
Last year was a little unique because we had the comp study.
Okay.
So we had to do things a little differently because we implemented the comp study. I think the year prior to that was 2%, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
No extra benefits were added. So last year was more for the general employees, only non-union, non-union folks. It was the implementation of the comp plan.
Commissioner Woodward, followed by Commissioner McGilvery.
Okay. And just, related to that point, also part of the comp study, we did do a 1% equity payment.
No.
So that wasn't, that didn't address the base. It was a 1% equity payment to bridge the gap to get us to the comp study that we implemented at the end of the year. That's what makes it unique.
So you still have the floor.
Okay, so then generally 1.5% is like what is expected.
There is no expectation. It depends on the year. 2% has been average for a while, and probably going forward will probably be closer to there. But again, because of all the union contracts, kind of relooking at some of our benefits this year, I'm recommending a 1.5, and we'll come back with a discussion on potentially like contributions to retirement and things of that nature. So there is no general expectation. It just depends on where the budget is and where we go with potentially other costs for employees.
And in here, one last question is there's the appointed officials are included in this. Can you tell me like the salary range for appointed officials, like roughly?
So, yeah, so I think Heather Mason had sent something, I'm not sure if you guys got it in time, where we have about 600 classifications. So it covers, it's merit, people who are in merit who are non-union, as well as appointed, which is another large group. So it can range everywhere from somebody like me to some of the secretaries to the judges. This does not include, though, any judges. It does not include any countywide electeds, and does not include the Board of Commissioners. So I'm not sure if that had been delivered yet, but we can get that for you before the board meeting on the 29th. I know that she just completed it.
So appointed people can include deputy executives and secretaries.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah, so it depends if you're in the merit system, what they call appointed. So a lot of people who are in the court system can tend to be appointed. It just depends.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it, Commissioner?
Yep.
Okay, Commissioner McGilvery. Oh, you signed up, but you don't.
She answered my questions.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anybody else? I have a question about these, this last 0.5% that you're setting aside and maybe we're going to use in the future. Do you see that being used for benefits across the board? Or do you see this more as, you know, oh, we have this individual who's done great things, let's give him an extra $50,000 kind of thing?
I know, I wish.
How do
We're
you
not there
see,
yet.
what does that mean? Ancillary, what are we saving this money for?
Yeah, so like for instance, potentially an increase in match and contribution to a 457, some wellness benefits or anything of that nature. Like I said, right now I've got 2 more unions coming across the pike, and we're looking at it possibly increasing some of those. Like the big one will be an increase in the match to the 457.
So it's an across-the-board kind of thing. It's not intended to be set aside as a special, individualized kind of thing.
No, we're not. Someday I'm hoping to come with a performance plan like that, but today this would just be benefits that would go toward everybody.
Okay.
And then negotiating those with the unions as well. Like I said, because we have all of them open at one time, I just want to see where everything kind of comes out and then recalibrate the non-union as well.
So then that extra funding, that extra 0.5%, where does that reside until you decide you want to spend it?
In the total compensation. Right now it'll stay in wages, and then if it goes into fringes, we'll recalibrate. And like I said, I'm hoping to bring that in early November.
Okay.
If not October, depending on my other unions that I'm working with right now.
Okay. And does this complicate the reporting of what we were going to, what we're going to do? I mean, should there be a recalculation, for example, of our fringe benefits, is my question. Or was that based on the 2%?
Right, yeah, so that's why it's 2%, so we can recalibrate it any way we want. There'll still have to be a budget amendment, so he'll just shift it. So once we know what all that, then he'll do one budget amendment.
Okay.
But the 2% is there, they're like basically at the cost, at the hold on the cost.
So that factor is still there and it's going to be the same? Okay.
Correct, either go into fringes or, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Okay. That's all the questions I had. Commissioner Woodward.
Yeah, I'm just to that point, and I think for the Finance Committee that whatever this other 0.5 thing is, that will come before the Finance Committee. It's not, so it's, I mean, that, whatever that comes up to be and what it looks like or some permutation of whatever the options are, that will come back before all of you. I mean, in terms of a budget perspective, it's captured in the budget, and accounted for, and we have a way to pay for it. And how it gets used, April will probably be bringing the recommendation, and then this committee will review it.
Thank you. Anyone else with comments or questions on this item? Are we going to separate out the question of the electeds, or does that?
I mean, I think that's captured in the report.
Yes, Captain.
Okay, so the report says Lago is going to make the recommendation, correct?
They did.
They did.
Which you did. So does that show up in this letter?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They recommend
Item.
0%.
There's 1, 2.
0%.
Yep.
I just want to be clear. Okay. That we all agreed to that, if we vote that way. Okay. All right, if there's no other comments, questions, discussion on this item, let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
Caldwell?
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, item passes unanimously. Thank you, Director Deputy Lynch?
Thank you for accommodating my schedule. You guys have a great day.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, we will go back to item number 9I. Evaluation standards for the expenditure of the American Rescue Plan Act local fiscal recovery funds. Okay, I need a motion. Commissioner Powell, supported by Commissioner Kowal. Good afternoon, Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to present this item. What you have before you is, I guess, possibly the beginning of a conversation, depending on the feedback here today. But the goal here is to set common evaluation standards and guiding principles with the Board of Commissioners and the administration as we continue to see more and more ideas coming forward for the expenditure of rescue plan funds. The proposal before you is basically trying to codify many of the principles that we've been discussing mutually since the advent of receiving these funds. I can go through this material if you'd like, or answer any questions you have. But I'm looking for your feedback and comfort level with moving forward. But the idea here is to have a common assessment tool, evaluation standards, to put proponents of new programs through the paces to ask some critical questions to ensure that before we start deliberating on these proposals, they align with our overall objectives.
Thank you. Yeah, and I will, I'll say that Mr. Ward came a few days ago to me with this, and I said, yeah, we can put it on the agenda, but I really want it to be a discussion point. We're not going to vote yes or no on this today unless everybody says we really love it the way it is. I really felt like the Finance Committee individually, members, will have some opinions and ideas of things they want to add to this. So this is a discussion more than anything, I think.
Yeah.
And I see Commissioner Kowal over here nodding her head that she's in favor of a common set of standards by which we're going to evaluate these proposals, and I'm in support of that myself. So let's go ahead and everybody sign up to speak, and I will call on you in the order you showed up.
I got you.
I can't.
Oh, you're on there, though. I've got you.
Okay.
She did.
Thank
So
you.
first up is Commissioner Cavell, and then Commissioner Kowal is next.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Hey, Chris. How do you see, yeah, this looks very good to me. How do you see working through the process of, like, for example, housing, right? Being part of the housing ARP study group to come up with recommendations and ideas. If there's a resolution related to ARPA, how do you see it having to fit into these guidelines? What should we be putting in the resolution? What does this change who we talk to in what order? Yeah, what do you think?
The objective here would be to have this pre-evaluation assessment tool to be provided to both the administration and the Board of Commissioners when a proposal is brought forward, so that you as elected officials can make an informed decision and look at the answers that the proponent is putting forward. So if you had something coming out of, and it would be mutually, administration proposals, board proposals, those coming from outside entities, other elected officials, all would kind of go through the same objective standards and evaluation. So, but before consideration, I think.
So there'd be like a form, and we'd have to fill out, why this is transformational, or something.
That would be the goal here, is to have the proponent detail how they're meeting these objectives, or exactly. So how they meet these criteria.
Okay, thanks. That sounds smart.
Commissioner Kowal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chris. I really like this overarching philosophy instead of just one-offs all over the place, so this is a good way to go. I just have one thing that I would like to perhaps look at changing here, and that is F, placemaking and infrastructure, and I feel like they should be separate categories and not lumped together. If anything, I think infrastructure would probably go better with even environmental sustainability. So I just see placemaking and infrastructure as two separate things.
Okay.
So I'm going to make
certainly
that
open to,
recommendation.
editing
We're not
this.
voting today, but I strongly
I
feel that
agree.
they should be separate. Otherwise, good.
All right. Very reasonable.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? Things they want to see added or deleted, or Commissioner Woodward?
See, I mean, Commissioner Ward knew they put it at the end of the meeting, and people stopped asking questions.
Yeah. I'm gonna put
Wear you down.
April and Kyle are going to lead up for me from here on out.
No, I mean, so what I like about how these priority area focuses, they nicely fit into, approvable expenditures allowed by ARPA. Around housing and food, I think there's this other economic security issues that we might want to also capture. I think it fits in that same economic insecurity, housing, food, and maybe other things. It makes a lot of sense. I guess looking at this, when a proposal comes forward I think that whoever's proposing, a department, the executive, the board, or whatever, to be able to speak to how does this accomplish this. I wonder if there's some value of some metric to capture the function of scale. So like doing something in a very specific area has certainly high impact to those individuals. Doing something similar across a larger area services more people, and so there's to me there's a little bit of a how do we capture the impact of scale other than just it's a bigger amount of money, something like that. So to help with the evaluation thing, and when I looked at this, that was actually what stuck on me more. Is how do we take these ideas and fit them in a way to help capture priority? We have a lot of resources. I'm happy to say the things that we have been doing, I think, nicely fit into these appropriate buckets. I think as a guiding principle concept, maybe this is very much in the right direction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Definitely excellent point. So tried to capture that in the efficient criteria. Perhaps we need to work on some language to build that out, make it clearer, and reach the objective that you were speaking to. I think we've seen some excellent proposals, but when it comes to implementation, sometimes the cost-benefit ratio doesn't play out well in terms of how much time and energy and effort goes to administration versus deploying funds to help people.
Yeah. No, I think it's something that we learned through the CARES process, how to get, small checks out to people, small grants out to small organizations, and we had to build an entire infrastructure. How to quantify it, measure it, and from a personnel point of view, there's the cost of doing it, and it can be contracted out, and then there's, the time and efficiency to be able to do that. So, I agree.
Anybody else? I have a couple of questions. One is, where does childcare fit in all of this? Because that's a big priority for the board, I know, is making sure we support childcare
Great
growth
question.
in our area. It's a big piece of why people aren't able to get back to work. So I don't know if it's workforce development or economic innovation.
That's been the way we've handled it to date. If I take back that comment to administration teams if we want to be more specific and call it out.
Try and beef it up a little bit in that regard. Also, same thing for mental health. We put money aside right away for mental health, but
I think the behavioral health reference and A there
right
kind of captures mental health. Some of the feedback we received when we did the acute proposals was mental health as a term doesn't capture a large enough group of need. So, but if we want to spell that out as well, I don't see a problem with that.
Okay. So those are two things I guess I'd want spelled out more clearly. And then my last comment was item G. I mean, we're reading along and all of a sudden the last one is improving county government services and operations, and there's nothing there. So I wondered if that was, we're good, or we can't think of anything, or we're finished.
There's nothing to improve.
This was a editing issue where it was originally in, then taken out, put back in again. I mean, we can fill in the detail a little bit more, but I think the idea here was to have some examples under each one. If you'd like us to fill that in a little bit, I definitely have some thoughts. And
Okay.
I know what we do, in terms of technology investments, service improvements, investing in our employees and talent.
Okay. Commissioner Moss.
Yes, I appreciate these appear to be written to be so vague and elastic to encompass just about anything and to not tie our hands. So well done. Thank you very much, and I'll vote in favor of it.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to leave that right where it's at.
For sure. Anybody else have any questions or comments? I'm going to recommend that we postpone this item for a couple of weeks to digest it and make any further comments to Mr. Ward and have him come back with an updated version of this. Commissioner Moss.
Would we like to receive and file? Would that,
Is that what we should do, is receive and file this?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a resolution, but, I mean.
no, well. Okay, whatever.
It's a good
Just
point.
for full disclosure, the administration is using this now sort of an internal document, not using the Board of Commissioners' name within it, but, just so that we can keep our processes moving forward.
Okay. I also think, and Commissioner Gershenson whispered in my ear, that the full board, individual commissioners might have some thoughts as to what they'd like to add to this. So, Commissioner Moss.
Did you say an internal document or an eternal document?
Well, these are not eternal funds, so I guess it's an internal document, but
Well, how programs tend to.
we're evaluating proposals. and-
Well, if you want to let everybody, bring it to the board, let
Developing.
everybody throw it in the soup, why not?
Yeah, and so as we're developing our proposals and evaluating others' proposals, we're using this as a working document. That's all I wanted to, convey.
Okay, good. Well, and it helps us too, because we're talking about the same kind of thing at a board level for just regular projects. So all of this is a nice segue to be using standard ways of thinking of how we're going to spend this money. So, so I guess we're going to receive and file at this time. Is that what we should do, Pam? You're my expert, or?
It is an action item, so I'm thinking to have a clear record, I mean.
Postpone
I guess
it?
you could receive and file it, but
Postpone it,
if you
and
postpone
then-
it, it'll take a comeback to resume the action or.
Has a motion been made yet?
Pardon?
Has a motion been made?
Put it on the floor.
No, there's no motion. I don't have a motion maker yet.
Okay.
I think that she started with a motion.
Bring it up with
I don't know if that's just put on the floor or.
proposed by the administration that would see both
Okay.
within the item next time you bring it up to vote on.
Okay, so let's do that.
I'm sorry.
What you said about postponing it to the next finance committee
Next
meeting.
finance meeting? Okay.
Is that
We have
for,
a make-
that's in October?
Or future finance.
A future finance meeting. Good point. Yeah, you and Commissioner Moss, you're good at this. Hi, Bob.
Meeting, okay.
So you need to get a motion
Do
for
we have a
that,
maker?
Commissioner.
We need a maker and a second.
Okay, I need a motion. Commissioner McGilvery, supported by Commissioner Cavell. Could you restate the motion just for all of us?
Yeah, so this would be the motion to postpone to a future finance committee meeting.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I could just ask a question
Commissioner-
in
Mr.
terms
Ward.
of expectation. Who will I be working with to gather the board's input, or should I be reaching out directly to the board? How would you like to proceed?
There's only 21 of us, Chris.
Well-
What's the big deal?
I'm sure the finance committee is very.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to go to another committee, so vote.
Okay, so if there's no other comments, let's prompt the vote on postponing this.
I see where Bob's here.
Postponing.
Meeting, do we have sanitary? Yeah, that's what I figured.
Colwell?
Yes.
Thanks for coming. Yeah.
All right.
Motion to postpone, passed, 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Okay, so motion carries unanimously. That's going to move us on to item 11, Public Health and Safety Committee recommendations. Item A is fiscal year 2022 PA Cooperative Reimbursement Program, Amendment Number 1. I need a motion. Commissioner Powell, supported by Commissioner McGilvery. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Markeisha Washington, and I am the chief of the Family Support Division at the Prosecutor's Office. I'm joined this afternoon with Susan Howard, also from Friend of the Court. She's appearing via Zoom. I come before the board this morning requesting that the board amend our budget to allow for a 2-year extension of our current contract. This contract will allow us to continue to provide services to our county. This includes establishing paternity, locating absent parents, as well as establishing child support orders. The Family Support Division of the Prosecutor's Office is a 4D child support enforcement program, which means that our budget is a collaborative effort between the federal, state, and county funds. 66% of our budget is through federal and state funds, the remaining 34% come through the county funds. With those funds is why I'm here asking for an additional extension of our current 5-year extension, of our current 5-year contract. And with that, I'm available for questions.
Okay.
Because you waited so long.
Thank you.
Right. You had to wait so long for us, so I did no questions.
All right, I'll open the floor to the commissioners. Anybody have any questions or comments?
She had to wait here so long.
We ought to give her some questions
I
because she
know,
waited
I
for 3
waited all
hours.
this
Yeah.
time.
So long, we need to come up with questions.
Yeah. How dare you?
Maybe we'll go
Wait, other
faster, get out
stuff.
of here.
You learned a lot about the county today, didn't you?
I did. Learned a lot.
So bad.
Well, I have a guy.
Commissioner Cavell.
You came before us yesterday, and
I did.
Yeah, and
Yes, I
thank
did.
you for answering those questions. But we usually have this kind of regular cast of characters, and I'm new to the commission. Are you new to the
I am
prosecutor's
new
office?
as well, so that's why I
Congratulations on the new
wasn't. I
gig.
did not know this is the first time that
Sweet.
I had to appear. I'm new in my position. I just was appointed in April.
Cool.
And so Susan Howyer has been a great benefit, which is why she's appearing here with us today, or with me today, as moral support. So
Awesome. Well, congrats on the gig.
thank you.
Happy to have you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Nobody has any questions? All right, well, with that, then let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
Colwell?
Yes.
It's funny that you guys want me.
Now you see, too, being a director, they say they got to do all this stuff with the commission, but they just hang out on their phones for 3 hours until they talk for 2 minutes. You know?
All right. Item passes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you,
Thank you.
Commissioners.
Thanks for coming today, and thanks
No
for being so
worries.
patient.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda is item 11B, fiscal year 2022 Local Health Department Comprehensive Funds. I need a motion. Commissioner Kowal, supported by Commissioner Powell. Hi, I see we have Stacy Smith with us today.
Yes, it's Stacy Smith from the Health Division. I'm sitting in for Leanne Stafford. Today, what we have before you is a resolution to request preliminary acceptance for the fiscal year 2022 Local Health Department Agreement Grant funding from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. We received notification, and in order to meet the contract execution date established by MDHHS, which is October 1st. We're just asking that you approve the preliminary acceptance of this agreement. This agreement is for funding in the amount of $11,430,410 for the period of October 1st through October 1st, 2021 through September 30th of 2022. This funding supports programs such as the Women, Infants, and Children's, the WIC program, Nurse Family Partnership, Infant Safe Sleep, and other essential local health programs. Like I said, they're expecting us to execute this agreement by October 1st in order to reimburse us for any incurred expenses. We did receive our notification for the application. It did go through the process and it was approved by the Board of Commissioners on August 5th. And that resolution number was 213317. So I'm available if you have any questions.
Okay.
Chairman, one other thing to add there is that this is just a preliminary authorization due to the timing of the board's calendar and MDHS with their deadline date. Unfortunately, within our grants policy, we don't have an exemption rule as we do with grant applications. So we kind of have to bring forth these type of grant agreements, acceptances to the board to get approval within the calendar timeframe. That's going to be a little bit difficult with this one, but you will see the actual grant agreement come back to you when MDHHS does give us that final approval, which I believe they have with this one. It's just going through the grant review process right now. So probably at your actual next round of finance committees, you will get the complete package, but there is some lapse there in between now and then. So just kind of.
So it's mostly a matter of timing. We're accepting over $11 million in state funding for a bunch of our stuff, but we're just approving the acceptance.
You're giving authorization for the chairman to sign the agreement.
Right.
Essentially, is that what that's what this item is? You will get at probably the next round the actual grant package for accepting the funds and the programs and everything like that.
Okay, so this just allows the chairman to sign early to meet the deadline.
Correct.
Because we only had one board meeting this month, and yeah, okay. Gotcha. All right, anybody have any comments or questions on this item? If not, let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
Howell?
Yes.
Yep, Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Item passes unanimously, and thanks for coming today.
She got one more.
Oh, and you have one more?
Yes.
Okay.
So the second item is similar to the first. This grant agreement is actually for the fiscal year 2022 Emerging Threats Local Health Agreement. It's the same timeline. It's required to be fully executed by October 1st. The funding amount for this one is $9,502,413. It's for the period October 1, 2021 through September 30th of 2021. This funding supports COVID-19 response, including vaccination, contact tracing, case investigation, violation monitoring, and modernizing and expanding the regional laboratory testing and response capabilities. So, any questions?
I have a question.
Okay, I'll open the floor to the commissioners. Commissioner Long.
Okay, thank you. So on the previous item, a little bit back, we did the 10 million, which was from the American Rescue Plan, and it seems like this is for the same thing, for the 9.5, but it's from the state. So I'm just getting confused about the money sources, because it looks like we're putting 19 million into the refunding of vaccines and whatever else it says there. So I just wonder about the money source on that. Maybe Mike knows, or it just seems like it's repetitive from the 10 million from the resolution that was previous before us.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I just wondered though. Do you know, Mike? Different money?
What I can probably say is that due to ARPA, is that the counties did receive their 122 million in this first tranche, but then also the federal government gave money to the states as well. And this is one of the programs that is set up through that funding through ARPA with the state of Michigan that our health division has also looked to get some funding for with these emerging threats. So
Okay.
I would look at it more as like a supplementary funding from the state, but it kind of looks like the same thing. I'm sure that we would probably have, the more money that you have for COVID-19 response and getting it out into the community is the best maybe, but that's for you guys to
Okay,
decide.
no, that makes sense. It's more funding, and I'm sure we'll use the funding or have used the funding, but I just wanted to point out there was the 10 million previous and then the 9.5. Thank you.
Commissioner Kowal.
I guess just to add on to that, was the first, wasn't that kind of retrospective to reimburse us? And this is more prospective
That
going
is correct
forward.
as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So they're kind of
Exactly
two.
that, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Anybody else have anything else on this item?
We need a motion.
Oh, we do need a motion. Commissioner Powell, supported by Commissioner Kowal. Going once, going twice. Let's prompt the vote.
Kowal?
Yes.
Thank you, Mike.
Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays?
Okay, passing unanimously. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for coming today. Appreciate it. All right. All right, next item on the agenda is our closed session, item number 12. So at this time, everybody who needs to leave a closed session?
I think it's just commissioners, the attorneys.
So the only people that can be here are the commissioners, the
And attorney
people making
staff
the
and
presentation, the
sheriff department.
attorneys,
Yep. So
and
we're taking a
Pam.
motion for-
And then you guys all have to go and,
Yep.
okay.
Residents.
1 minute after.
Yes.
Okay.
First, we need a
No,
motion.
we don't.
Move to closed session, then we'll come back into the open meeting.
Okay, but somebody has to escort her.
You just sit in the hall.
Okay.
She just didn't know how to.
All right, so we need, before we do all that, we need a motion to go into closed session. So you want to make, Commissioner Cavell moves that we go into closed session. Commissioner Long supports it. And we need a vote, so let's prompt the vote to go into closed session.
Okay, closed session.
We have to wait. Don't you have your
Cavell?
No, she will have to go out after we vote to go into closed session.
It's not, I need a separate motion for that. I'll have to clear that out. So that's for the approval of the other fee.
When they move to
Oh,
come out of closed session.
Oh, perfect. We got it right on here.
Okay.
Okay.
Beautiful.
So how do I tell them this is for?
Just go ahead and save it as passed after you get enough votes.
Okay, so we have Cavell and Long. Sorry, guys.
All right, Nick came up saying what we were doing.
Commissioner Kowal,
Kowal?
Yes.
Okay,
and now you'll save it as passed.
all right.
And now we're good.
Motion carried. We need to close the doors, and I need to make sure we're offline. So-
Great. Okay, so we have voted to go into closed session. When we open it, again, we'll notify everybody. Okay.
That mean office is out.
I'm told that we are recording again, so I'll declare the meeting back in open session. And I need a motion to, Commissioner McGilvery?
Madam Chairman, I would make a motion to approve the recommended settlement.
Supported by Commissioner Powell. All right. Is there any other discussion? Let's prompt the vote to support the Corporation Council recommendations for settlement.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Unanimously, thanks for coming. All right, two more items on our agenda. Next item is public comment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have a public comment at the end of our finance meeting.
Okay.
Go to my pen.
She's here.
Just like the board
I
meeting?
just signed up. So I don't have to vote.
Honestly, I think it just happened.
It just happened. Okay.
Signed. I know.
I didn't know we were switching it up, but it's okay. We had public comment at the beginning and at the end again now, so. Okay.
Really?
All right.
Yeah, I did. That's your.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm going to put the timer up when you start. Just tell us your name and what community you're from, and welcome.
Hello, my name's Catherine Kennedy. I'm from Lake Orion, and I still have issues with the transparency and the amount of volume of data that gets thrown at the citizens with no time to review realistically. I actually was a little late this morning because I tried to delve into the 1,077-page package for today's meeting at 11. I don't know how any of you read it, frankly. The fact that it's so difficult to scroll through now makes it even worse. I'm not a fan of the big system so far. It just seems to be another step to try to keep the citizens away from knowing what's going on. I don't understand how anybody considers 18 hours sufficient time to review over 1,000 pages. Since yesterday, we had 2,060 pages to review, just since yesterday. Needless to say, I didn't get through it all. I don't know if anybody got through it all, but we keep voting and throwing money out the door. So I actually am very glad to see there's at least some effort to try to establish a process. I'm a little concerned with the transformational terminologies that keep getting thrown around, because it does seem that there's an awful lot of constitutional violations going on throughout the country. And Oakland County is no exception, sadly. So I really am very concerned about a lot of the proposals that have been done through the past year, very quickly, with very little input from the people. Just having everything converted to a new system in the middle of a 2-year budget hearing, and to have hearings that the agenda doesn't even tell you anything. There was no data linked for any of the budget hearing dates. It was simply a name of a department and a time, which wasn't exactly honored necessarily either. So for me to say that this was a budget hearing that was reasonable, I can't say that. I don't think anything, the fact that there was no data directly linked to any of the times for any of the budget hearings, to me, is just critical. But I hope that there's an era where we're going to try to improve the processes in this board, because it's very concerning being a public entity with so little transparency. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Is there anybody else who wants to address the board today? Seeing no one, I will call public comment closed. Is there any other business to come before this Finance Committee? I will just take 30 seconds to say how grateful I am that all of the members of the Finance Committee and the staff have very seriously taken this budget process that has happened since July through now, trying to get the budget finished by the end of September. Ms. Kennedy is correct. There is tremendous amount of reading, tremendous amount of discussions that have to happen at all levels up and down, and it is hard to keep it straight. And I really appreciate how seriously everybody took it and how far we came so quickly. And I appreciate everybody's help, because y'all know this is my first year, and I'm learning too. So thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it. And if nobody has anything else they want to add, I would call the meeting adjourned at 1:42.
All right.
Thank you.
Big agenda.